Welcome to the Be a Maker Club podcast, where we discuss ways to encourage makerspace education in society. I'm your host, Zeph, and today we are joined by my guest co-host, Rob Perhamus. Rob Perhamus is the founder, president, chief philanthropist of Umakers Makerspace, which is in Upland. And today we're going to talk about makerspaces. So, Rob, the number of makerspaces has been, and you posted this on your social media, right? The number of makerspaces has been growing rapidly. In 2006, there were about 100. In 2012, now the number has grown to 1,000. And now in 2022, last count was 14,000. So why do you think makerspaces are growing?
Well, the concept's very old, access to tools. I think that we've gone towards a knowledge society. So most people will go towards things like where your brain is your capital as opposed to things you can make. So, of course, we have doctors and lawyers. And what makerspaces do is they provide locations, local people, community, with the opportunity to do what those people can't. And there's always opportunities when you can do something that other people don't want to.
Right.
Or can't. Okay. So the American dream, the California dream, I think it's kind of really tough these days. You know, college used to be free.
Mm-hmm.
Houses were less than 2 times income.
Yeah.
Disneyland was $25.
Was it? Wow. Yeah, that's a surprise. Okay.
Yeah. This location is really one of the nicest places in the world.
Mm-hmm.
We have mountains,
Yeah.
beautiful hillsides, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And within 45 minutes, you know, you can go to the beach.
Right.
So you go to the mountains, go to the beach, and we have all these other activities off. We have great weather. But I do see us kind of running downhill for younger people. The American dream includes making life better for the next generation. Not the same,
Right.
but better. So I've lived this great life in Upland. Okay, had the 2 kids. They're in their 30s. They're killing it. Both went to UCs, doing great. But I also see things like the median income for a family is $80,000. A house used to be 3 times, traditionally 3 times your income, or that could allow you to have a $240,000 house.
Right.
Well, you're not going to find one. I don't know where you're going to find one. What country you're going to find? Certainly not in California. Certainly not around here. I mean, my house is 10 times. It's 10 times, not 3 times, 10 times. So, you know, I think that's really tough on younger people. And I think that it's a shame that that's happened. So, what a makerspace can do, because if you were to start a business, okay, then this place, as an example, is $3,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And there's $100,000 worth of tools in here.
Right.
So if you did a standard business plan, you know, it would show your cash flows of $3,000 and all that kind of stuff. The $100,000 worth of tools would be another $1,500 a month or $4,500 a month. You know, and wow, you can, the burn rate that you would have, the barriers to entry are really high unless you go to a makerspace. Because what we do, and I give actually millennials credit for this, the entrepreneurship that we used to have, you know, the Apples, the HPs, all these places born in garages. But what millennials came up with was the shared economy that's exhibited by things like Airbnb or Uber. You're using an asset, you know, that's using an asset.
Right.
So a makerspace provides people with the starting opportunity. The costs are only 2%, less than 2%.
Yeah.
So that gets them going. Then they can take their profits and they can invest in themselves, buy equipment if they find the right thing. They can also experiment, see what works. They can do research. And you know, many people that have come here have. It's mainly for side hustles.
Right.
Okay, so it's not like a full-time thing, at least at first. Now, some people will, and they'll turn it into a full-time thing. they'll get their start here. They'll find out that they have a market for what they make.
Yeah.
And then like I say, then they'll buy their own equipment, set it up in their own garage, and then they'll go from there.
So it sounds like what the definition of a makerspace, and perhaps then we can look at the reasons. But the definition of makerspace is one, it's to do with how society has become. It's to do with which is that there's lots things the basic things that you need to fulfill the American dream are a lot more expensive, like house, right, a car, right, and your income hasn't grown in proportion. Then the second bit seems to be like how society's evolved into the sharing economy. And then the third thing is the technology, like the sharing, the access to things, right?
Right.
Would you say that these are like three macro trends, perhaps?
Yes.
But so what is? I mean, you can tell me a little bit about what's unique about Umakers, but generally, we're discussing why makerspaces are growing. So is there a specific reason, or is it just like all of these things combined in different ways for local makerspaces?
Well, I think when I was growing up, I would make things with my dad and my brothers.
Right.
I think that gave me a little bit of an edge on math,
Okay.
in particular.
Yeah.
I knew what a tape measure was. And
Sure.
I could
Yeah.
put together things and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I got into engineering, and I got into becoming a ceramic engineer.
Okay.
My overall thing around this area is location. Makerspaces are location based. Okay.
Okay.
They're all over Silicon Valley, and they've been there for 20 years.
Right.
My thing has always been, at least for 20, 30 years, why not here? Why don't we have venture capitalists here?
Yeah.
Why don't we have inventors here?
Right.
Uh, why don't we have people that have done really well, made a change?
So okay,
Turns
so
out-
1 minute.
it
So
turns
when you
out-
say here, you mean specifically Upland,
Upland.
which we're in Southern California, right?
Yes.
Right. And so your question is why can't we do this here? Right?
Yeah.
Why can't we? Okay.
So, as it turns out, my experience from the last 5 years, there's venture capitalists. There's people that have started their companies and sold them for many millions. There's people that are Elon Musk lead architect.
Yeah.
There's people that have come up with cures for cancer. And they've been here. So for me, it's quite an honor to get those types of people, because for years and years, the Inland Empire has been called trucks and sheds.
Mm.
If you go to the Bay Area, you see some young people, you could just get a vibe, and it says, my grandfather was an entrepreneur.
Right.
My father was an entrepreneur. When I grow up, yeah, I'm going to go to college, but when I grow up, I'm going to be an entrepreneur too.
Mm. Mm.
And around this area, very sad to say that what I see, the perpetuation of things, is that we're trucks and sheds, warehouses. Okay, so in the area down here, unfortunately, I think it's more like my grandfather was a forklift driver.
Right.
My father was a forklift driver. When I grow up, I'm going to be a forklift driver too. So it's not very cutting edge in that world. I mean, there's some robotics and stuff like that goes on in the distribution centers and things like that. The other thing that goes along with that is quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
So because we are trucks and sheds, no matter what you do, we got more smog.
Right.
And there's all kinds of data that says that people that live along freeways and stuff,
Yeah.
because of the smog, they don't live as long.
Right.
They get sicker, all those kinds of things. So, I don't think I'm going to solve all those problems,
Mm-hmm.
but I should get into the big one for me. And I learned this from a guy by the name of Peter Drucker. I think it was 1964 when he started writing about this.
Well, isn't there a management school named after him?
Yeah, and I went to that school. I got my MBA at CGU, the Drucker School, my executive MBA.
Yeah.
And I didn't go till I was about 40. And his preference was not to deal with kids right out of undergrad.
Okay.
He wanted to deal with, people 40 years old plus. And the reason for that was he felt like it would take that long before they would have an actual influence on how companies were being run and managed. So he wanted to wait until that time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I found. I was very, my classmates were 70 years old, managing partners for the largest consulting firms in the world. People that would fly in once a week for a class from Sweden.
Wow.
And these are the,
So this was an Ivy League school essentially, right?
yeah, and when you say Ivy League or whatever, there's not too many places that I know. For instance, you can't, I don't know, maybe it's true. Maybe there's a professor there and they call it the Joe Schmo, Professor Joe Schmo School of Education.
Okay.
So, around here, that's the only school that I know of. There's no, and it's the Drucker School. Of course, he passed away in 2005. Many of the things that he said continue to this day to come true. One of the things he was outraged by was the cost of education.
Well, I
And
think
he's in
that's
education.
yeah. No, yeah.
And he would say things so far out. He would say things like, why couldn't I give this lecture instead of you 50 people? Why couldn't I give it to using the internet? Why couldn't I give this lecture to 1,000 people? And for that matter, why couldn't I do it from my house? Kind of like this.
Right.
what we're
Of
doing
course.
right,
Yeah.
what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
So the internet enables an awful lot of things. From lectures and podcasts and video.
But he foresaw it. So COVID certainly saw a big boom in that sort of behavior, right?
Yeah.
When people were forced to not go to college or school, all of a sudden we found solutions.
There's another guy that Drucker was associated with from before he got out here. He was at Bennington College in the East Coast, liberal arts school, and then he went to NYU and became famous. So they asked him to come out to Claremont, and we'll name a school after you, kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
Maybe not like that. So he came out a very big international draw, huge international draw. So he was very influential. But for instance, this Buckminster Fuller guy,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
he also taught at Bennington College, and Drucker would tell stories of him coming to his house. Peter was married to Doris, and would come to this Buckminster Fuller guy. He would come to Drucker's house at 1 o'clock in the morning and would talk about his ideas until 7 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
Peter said that's how you learn how to listen.
Mm.
You have to be patient listening.
Listening. Yeah.
Right? So one of Buckminster Fuller's famous quotes, he was also very influential with Steve Jobs.
Okay.
And you'll hear on Steve Jobs giving a commencement speech to Stanford, right? And he says, when I was a kid, we didn't have internet and computers. All we had was the Whole Earth catalog, which was a catalog, and there were 5 of them made. It cost like $5, $2, something like that. And they were like this. So as I understand it, Peter Drucker was always really anxious to get his hands on that. Now the Whole Earth catalog, as you might imagine, shows a picture of the whole Earth from the moon in the 60s.
Right.
Okay? And right on the whole Earth, on that picture, it says, little tiny letters, access to tools.
Hmm.
Now what was in these catalogs? A lot of stuff from Buckminster Fuller. Living off the grid,
Right.
higher efficiency, for solar collection, heating, cooling systems, all kinds of things. And I understand, I have to fact check this. I think like Boeing, the design of jets, I think that's also got a lot of Buckminster Fuller in that design.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, very one of Buckminster Fuller's quotes that I believe in too, as Steve Jobs did, was, "You can't teach creativity. You give people access to tools, and they become creative."
Right.
Very understandable now, because when you look around neighborhoods, bedroom neighborhoods like around here, there's very few things in garages even.
Well, it's full of junk most of the time.
There's there's no table saw,
No.
there's no drill press,
No.
and it goes on and on. And,
Yeah.
and Steve Jobs also did like a recording thing as
Mhm.
well, to be released long after his death, and he talks about his garage with the drill press and things like that.
Right.
So I don't think it's a problem that I think the problem is that for younger kids, younger generations, they just never learn how to invent, create new things
Because, well, I mean,
because they
they
don't
didn't
have
grow up
access.
with garages that had tools in them, right?
Yeah, they don't have tools.
Yeah.
So if they don't have access to tools, they're not very creative.
Yeah.
Now, entrepreneurs, how do they say this? You know, uh, when you're looking about a career, a lot of people say, well, I could do this or that.
Mm.
See, entrepreneurs say, I think I'll make up a new choice. The choices aren't A or B, doctor, lawyer. There's a new choice. That's what entrepreneurs do.
Yeah.
And how do they do that? They start by making.
So
There's
wait.
also there's also too the other expansion from the
Uh-huh.
internet. You know, have you not heard of e-commerce?
Uh-huh.
Etsy,
Yep.
Facebook Marketplace,
Right. Right.
Craigslist, eBay. It goes on and on and on and on. So it's not like there aren't marketplaces. These are huge things. Other trends that are occurring right now, perhaps you heard, Macy's. They're
They're
closing.
closing down retail
They're
stores. Huh?
closing
Yeah.
down places,
Yeah.
right? Because people don't like that. But
Yeah.
what people do like is they like custom made, one of a kind things.
Right.
So they do. I must say that baby boomers, we were very good at the retail of it.
Mm.
We like Nordstrom's.
Right.
We like Macy's.
Uh-huh.
We like those kinds of things. And all of those businesses, they all attracted international trade and buying cheap from China or Mexico or something like that.
Right.
Okay. But that trend for younger people seems to be going away. They like to support local. I think everybody's heard like Walmart, what Walmart did to economies.
Mm.
And several, it took them a long time to get Walmarts in place because they knew the other local store owners or local people there
Yeah.
in the area, general area, they knew that that was a death sentence for their business because Walmart would come in. So there might be a reversal, is kind of what I think, where people get to retaliate, so to speak, earn a living, and go against the grain and beat Walmart. How can they beat Walmart? Just strictly on logistics, customs.
Mm.
Walmart really isn't. They do offer products. I've seen them. They offer custom coasters,
Right.
slate coasters,
Yeah.
for like $40. But if you have access to tools and a laser, you can do the same thing for 40 cents.
Yeah.
So there's good margin.
So I mean, Amazon's kind of done the same thing, right? So you're kind of saying that at least on the retail side, it's maybe we threw the baby out with the bathwater type of situation, right? Because we're like, oh yeah, here are these big companies with great infrastructure. They can deliver anything on any time, made from anywhere in the world, but really, it is not everything, right? They're great for something. Like if I want to buy toilet paper, I don't want to make toilet paper at home,
Right.
right? I don't want to do that. But yeah, I want to make a customized coaster at home, right? Because I want to give it to a friend. I want to keep it for myself and learning that. So do you think it's so then the corresponding rise of makerspaces, is that because of the fact that we've realized something that because it feels I mean nowadays it's very like if the fact that people have an awakening, I find I'm cynical about that. I feel it's more economic necessity or some sort of other trend that maybe forces people to think about this. So which one do you think it is? Like which one is it really that people have realized, oh my god, we should learn how to make things and that's why maker spaces are going? Or is it really that they're pushed into these spaces and then they're realizing, oh yeah, we should learn to make, what I'm saying? There's sort of two separate things there, but what do you think?
I think it's wherever there's an opportunity, and that's what it is. Makerspaces provide an opportunity for a side hustle with
Right.
very few barriers to entry, as they call it. Uh, Low cost entry,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Low risk. You're not risking leases for years and stuff like that.
Right.
You're not risking all those things. So, not everybody will do it,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And it takes what's called gumption.
Gumption?
Gumption.
Okay, what is that? How do you define that?
Self-determination.
Self-determination.
Okay.
Okay.
Another interesting thing that I thought that was kind of became popular in the 70s was Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
And it shows, everybody needs to eat, they need housing, they need, think basics like that.
Yeah.
And at the top of this, the peak of this thing represented, it's like a peak, self-actualization.
Uh-huh.
So people say, well, what's that? Self-actualization. You look into it, they need creativity. It's a human need. It's not a want, it's a need.
Right.
Okay? So as I look around, and no offense here, but as I see people working in the grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
uh, not a lot of creativity there restocking shelves.
Sure.
I also see, say nurses, they make pretty good money around here and all that kind of stuff. But I don't see a lot of opportunities for creativity there.
Mm-hmm.
This is also related to a lot of other things. There is a company, pretty famous. They're out of Stanford, IDEO, and they do design thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and it's pretty popular, or at least it has been. And even Tim Brown, the CEO, is in videos that say things like on the maker movement itself. He'll say, you're not really a designer unless you make things.
Okay.
So, you see commercials about the girls in college who start a design firm because they got Chase or something like that, but they had access to tools.
Right.
By the way, if you didn't know this, I don't even think you're a college anymore. You could consider this place high school shop class, okay?
Okay.
With some fancy tools.
Right.
Okay. I don't know if you know this, but you can just type it into Google and say Harvard Makerspace, MIT Makerspace, Stanford Makerspace. They'll have essentially the same tools as what I have here.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say
Sorry, I just want to say I definitely can vouch for that. I've seen Stanford's lab, and I've known several people who are in the MIT Media Lab. So we can look it up, but I can definitely vouch that is completely true. All Ivy League schools have a form of makerspace, and I think just to add to that point, not just the schools themselves, but a lot of companies which you wouldn't think would have makerspaces actually do because they understand the value that a makerspace gives in terms of creativity or just the opportunity to express, correct?
Yeah. So, General Electric's had a makerspace, for a long time. Pretty sure Facebook has one. And as I recall, what's his name there? Who's the CEO?
Of Facebook?
Yeah.
Was it Mark Zuckerberg? No. Well, yeah, he is the CEO, right?
Yeah.
So-
So as I understand, I saw some clip someplace. It said he's the only one in the company not allowed in the makerspace until he receives safety training.
Well, you know what? I mean, one thing that was interesting for me is, and this is a slightly different point, but that I founded a children's makerspace, so that's what my motive. I actually saw a post where Mark Zuckerberg had invited somebody to teach his daughter how to use a 3D printer.
Uh-huh.
And I was pretty excited by that. And I think, of course, it's a slightly different example, but it really underscores the importance that people who are high achieving, who are at the forefront of some kind of creative endeavor, place on makerspaces and making, I think, right?
Yeah. I wish I could have saved this, but everybody has different feelings on like Elon Musk, right?
Sure.
So one of his recent ones, he's talking and he just says, I think we got too many MBAs. He said we need people that will walk out on the shop floor. So for me personally, I always enjoyed that.
Mm.
I really didn't want to sit on the 12th floor in some office. It's boring.
Yeah.
I like to be on the shop floor, which I guess was somewhat self-limiting, because the job says you have to be on the 12th story
Mm-hmm.
in a corner office.
Right.
And I didn't want it. I didn't want that. I would rather be on the shop floor. I also found that people, we'll call them blue-collar workers
Yeah.
that are on the shop floor, I also found them to be two things: nicer people, and also a hell of a lot more creative. And as a manager, that's pretty much what I did. I just listened,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd tell me the answers,
Yeah.
and we were very successful that way. I noticed these other things that have happened too.
Well, wait, sir.
Yeah,
Can
go
I
ahead.
just ask one thing? One of my other guests actually also mentioned this. They said that they like to make because they think that everybody who they've met who makes are much nicer than people who
Yeah,
don't make.
yeah,
Is that what you think? Have you
same
found
thing,
that as well?
same thing. So I'm retired, and just in a very simple way, who wants to hang out with jerks?
Of course.
I'd rather hang out with nice people, and people that make things are nice. So why not?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Let's see what else is there in this.
So I mean, mostly we're really just talking about like the trends that support the growth of makerspaces. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about like different makerspaces, because Umakers that you founded is a
Yeah.
community makerspace, but you're kind of the education in Umakers is completely free, right? So is that a different sort of makerspace? I'm imagining, say, compared to if you go to an Ivy League school, or I know there are different kinds of makerspaces. So maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, one of the things is that, as I began with this, I've done fine financially. So I don't need to work for money anymore. So this is a social cause.
Right.
So I'm a social entrepreneur, which to many people doesn't make sense. Why would you work and not get paid for it? Well, because I can, you know. Um, so I think it's very important. So things I like to work on, and makerspaces in particular, um, Drucker would have these themes that I extracted from his works over 40 years. Um, you know, it's okay to make a lot of money. Capitalism is good, okay, but only so much. It can get out of hand,
Right.
and it can be, you heard about it every once in a while. There's only 1% of people that make money.
Mm.
Everybody else is pretty much a slave.
Right.
Now, you could say this is Marxism,
Uh-huh.
a form of socialism, okay? Because Marx would say, if you give people access to tools, they'll improve their lives. So, because all the colleges in the United States now have makerspaces, of course, they don't want to be teaching
Right.
socialism, so they changed a word and they
Uh-huh.
say, we democratize the means of production
Right.
so that people are in there. And what can happen out of this is those couples that make 80,000 or the individual that make 40,000 around here, they can do a side hustle in a short
Uh-huh.
amount of time, say 2 hours a week, okay, and they can add to their $40,000 income another 24,000.
Gotcha. Which is substantial, right?
It
That's a
is. It's
that's a big,
substantial,
yeah, that's a
and there are
substantial amount of
some that
money.
have been here who have maybe gone a little bit overboard, buy their own equipment and stuff, make
Right.
120,000 in 3 months.
Wow.
So can
That's I mean that's
now
a
can
proper
you
full-time income.
can you imagine? You know, I think you'd have to be a top-notch brain surgeon to make $600 an hour or something. But there are people that have been here and they'll run 4 or 5 machines at the same time while they're here because they stay hungry, they stay foolish, they think they can, and they do. So they are. I get to also meet another Steve Jobs quote: "The crazy ones
Hmm.
who do."
Well, I mean they're the ones with the gumption, right? You refer to that.
Yeah,
So those they're self-selecting and they're looking
right.
basically. Okay.
So the other thing here, I'm an engineer, but I must say that I'm not as creative as a lot of people that come here. So it's on in type of education. I went back to Plato and Socrates.
Hmm.
Socrates is, I know that I don't know. So I kind of adopted that for a while. I know that I don't know, but I like to hang out with people who do.
Right.
And it's just absolutely phenomenal the ideas that come out of people when they have access to tools.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, completely agree. I mean, as you know, I founded a BA Maker Club originally as a children's makerspace, and
Yeah.
my own two kids were there, and we work with thousands of kids, and I think they were a real like you could see the difference from almost session to session that we made, because kids are in that way they're fantastic, right? They have no prejudice, no barrier, and they'll say what they exactly feel. So if you taught them something, they benefited from it, they'll apply it, and next time they'll come and ask to do more. So it was really clear cut that this was happening. Adults are a little more difficult. They don't express as quickly, I suppose.
There is a TED Talk by Sir Ken Robinson
Oh
that
yeah.
was
Oh
also
yeah.
an influence, and one of his most, I think it's one of the most watched TED Talks ever.
Yeah.
And he's very funny, okay?
Yes.
But what he does is he talks about creativity.
Uh huh.
And he says one of the examples he uses is a longitudinal study on kids.
Uh huh.
So he takes some kids, 5-year-olds or something like that, and he gives them paper clips and says, imagine what you can make out of these paper clips. And they come up with thousands of things. They build houses, rocket ships, cars, all these things. So with the education system, though, we kind of teach people not to be creative. So he says, you take the same group, and they're in 5th grade, and you say, how many things can you make out of that? And by that time, 5th grade, it's down to 100 things instead of 1,000.
Right.
Then they take the same group after they're done with college, and they say, what can you make out of paper clips?
Mm-hmm.
And they say indignantly, it's a paper clip.
Ah.
You could only make a paper clip out of a paper clip. So it kind of dumbs us down, especially in the area of creativity.
It takes the education is then taking the creativity out.
Yeah.
From.
So,
Okay.
and I take it a lot of people kind of agree. They've watched Sir Ken Robinson. Don't listen to me.
Right.
Listen to him.
Well, and we'll post that link in this video. So yeah.
Yeah. So the maker movement is very exciting, and I think it's going to continue to grow. One of the things is getting the word out.
Mm.
I've met many people in this area, and they'll say I have a makerspace, and they don't know what one is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they say things like, "Why would you want to make anything?" So they say things like that. Um, but and even people that go to local colleges, they have makerspaces at Cal Poly Pomona. They got them at Mount Sac. They got them. I'm confused about Cal State San Bernardino. I thought I met a teacher who works at the makerspace there.
Uh-huh.
But even I've met people here that have come over to make things. A little project or something like that. They come over to make things, and they said they went to Cal Poly Pomona, and I'll say, "Oh, did you use the makerspace?" And they say, "What makerspace?"
Huh. Okay.
I said, "How old are you?" "I'm 35." They didn't have it then. Okay.
Wow.
There's a guy that's been here to make some furniture. He's a brain surgeon who did his residency at Harvard.
Uh-huh.
And he did his undergrad stuff at Berkeley, then Boston College, Boston University, and then Harvard for his residency.
Right.
So he came over, and while he was here, I said, "So, when you went to Berkeley, did you use the makerspace?" "What's a makerspace?" This is the guy. Okay. Then he went to Boston University. He and his wife actually went there. Okay. "Did you use the makerspace?" He says, "What makerspace?" Then I didn't know it. I thought Harvard was all business. Apparently they could do a residency for medical there too.
Yeah.
So that's where he did his residency. And I said, "Well, while you were there, did you go to the makerspace?" And of course he didn't know that. But there's one here.
Wow.
So, the other opportunity, it may have blown by you
Oh.
wherever you were. There are places, Dallas Makerspaces, 2,200 members and 40,000 square feet. There was a tech shop, which is a chain of 10 of them throughout the United States, and one in Japan and one in the Middle East, and they all collapsed. I think the difference was the overhead of management.
Right.
Even in the not-for-profit sector,
Yeah.
people can make a lot of money if they're the executive director, let's call it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I just do this for free.
Right.
And I think that might be a difference because, when you do go to college, those professors are getting paid, other support staff and
Yeah.
all that. Everybody's getting paid. Everybody's got their fingers in it. So, yeah, you might be able to use a makerspace while you're there, but you're also paying all this tuition,
Right.
while you're there.
Right.
Um, I don't know why you can't do both at the same time. For instance, why can't you go to Cal Poly Pomona? They got a makerspace there. Let's say you take business.
Mm.
So when you're a freshman, why don't you develop a new product, do the supply chain, do everything on that.
Right.
Why don't you do marketing? Why don't you do the accounting? Why don't you do the legal?
Yeah.
How do you form a company and all that kind of stuff? Take care of all that stuff while you're going. And then that way, by the time you get done, you'll have a choice. You can either go to work for someone else, or you can hire classmates to work
Right.
for you.
Well, I mean, I think maybe that's a much bigger topic. As you know, I work at a university. I won grants there, and there's lots of other factors at play usually. But yeah, I mean, by any measure, just even having access to a makerspace is going to help you. Like, even if it helps you a little bit, it's better than nothing, right? Like, I'd say is that a fair conclusion that we can maybe at least draw?
Yeah, yeah, it's it's like you say, it's not everything.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to teach you a lot of things when, uh, I guess, this is my brother who told me this. When you go to college, you learn two things: how to learn and how to communicate.
Mm.
And that's really all you get.
Yeah.
And I kind of tend to believe him. Yeah, because now with the internet, I mean, what, you don't have YouTube?
Yeah.
You can take classes. What do you want to learn? AI? They got complete classes for, coursework
Yeah.
for $15.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So why would you choose to go to some place that charges $35,000 a year? And I've worked in that space as well.
Right.
Set up an online school, and I had about 2,000 people sign up. I made it free because I was outraged at the cost of education, and I even forgot that I had set it up. It cost $120 a year. Learning
Right.
management system called Moodle.
Okay.
So I set up all the classes and stuff like that, and all these people signed up. And but to tell you the truth, it was boring.
Because they're just watching.
And there's lots of studies that have been done on the success rate,
Mm.
the learning that occurs with online classes.
Yeah.
And I suppose there's a few exceptions or whatever, whereas, like, say, some kids can learn more or do well by learning by sitting at a computer. And but the results say not very many people do. They do research on this stuff to see what the effectiveness of
Yeah.
online learning is. So, of course, they keep trying to make things. I actually use a little bit of distributed education here as well. So on my webpage, I have some. It's just a Google page because it's free,
Right.
and it shows the equipment, and it shows you what software to use, and it puts a link on there to go to this YouTube channel because it's good. So I'm somewhat of a curator,
Right.
and so then people with gumption
Can come and
will go there. They'll learn, and they'll come over here, and I do that because if you come over here, it's fine if you're here. But, if I had 40 people here all at one time learning,
Yeah, that's not gonna work.
it's not going to fit in this little space here.
Yeah.
So I try to get people to do all their homework, so to speak, learn everything that they want. They can be creative. They can, and some of them, maybe myself too, what we do is we wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, what am I going to make? And I'll start at that time,
Yeah.
do the computer work and everything, and then I'll come over here. So,
Okay. Well, Rob, thank you very much. So I think it would be fair to say that there's a bunch of macro factors that are leading up to this growth in the makerspace movement, and maybe there are not as many makerspaces like Umakers because Umakers is unique in that respect that you're very local. You're not in what I would call a quote top-notch area like a Silicon Valley, you're also making the actual education process free, right? Which is quite important.
It's very important. If you look at the educational attainment in the city of Upland, actually in the United States, only 30% of people have a bachelor's degree, and only another 10% over the top that have a master's degree or a professional degree. Okay, so if you want to make an open space that's open, you don't cater to just the top 10% that go to college.
Right.
You cater to the mass, which is actually 70%, because you don't need a degree. You don't need a 4.0 GPA in high school to get in, because it may not be that your need for this creativity or extra income or side hustle doesn't happen until you're 25, 35, 45, or like one of our members, 82. So it's open.
You start when you start, right?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much, Rob. This was
Thanks, Zach.
one of our first episodes with our guest co-host, Rob Perhamus. We're going to do a bunch more. Rob is a wealth of information about the making movement. See you guys later.